Sometimes it is very difficult to believe that such terrible things as brutal murders, rapes happen in the world we live in. In this video, you will learn about two tragedies that happened to young girls who dreamed of a happy life, travel, family, and love. A 20-year-old student went for a jog and disappeared without a trace. The entire country was watching her search, and the police could not find a single clue. The truth, revealed with the help of surveillance camera footage, shocked the whole of America and gave rise to heated debates. Anna Hopkins was born on April 3, 1996, in Austin, Texas. When she was in the second grade, her parents divorced, and Anna, her mother, and two brothers moved to Iowa. At the same time, her father continued to maintain close relations with the children. After graduating from school, she entered Iowa State University, where she majored in psychology. In her free time, she worked at a day camp for children at a regional medical center. She led an active lifestyle, played sports, and had many friends. Her Instagram was full of cheerful photos and the status, "It's a great day to be alive." She spent the summer of 2018 in a tiny town called Brooklyn, which is also in Iowa. Its area is barely more than 3 kilometers, and only 1,400 people live there. It would seem that in such a quiet place, where everyone knows each other, nothing terrible can happen. On July 18, 2018, Anna was going for a run. In Brooklyn, she lived with her boyfriend Jack Thompson in his brother's house. That evening, she was alone in the house. Her boyfriend went to work in another city, 210 kilometers from Brooklyn. Anna sent him a photo on Snapchat and went for a run at about 7:30 in the evening. The next day, Anna was supposed to go to work, but she never showed up. This seriously worried her relatives and boyfriend. They all knew that the girl was extremely responsible and never missed work without warning. In addition, she did not answer calls and messages. As a result, the parents decided to contact the police, who began searching for Anna. From the very first days, this case began to attract increased attention throughout America. As for the residents of Brooklyn, the disappearance of the young girl was a real shock for them. Nothing like this had ever happened in this tiny town before. People never locked their doors and were confident in their own safety. Anna's father, John Hopkins, came to Brooklyn from Austin and took an active part in the search. He distributed leaflets with her photos, asked people, and tried in every way to help in the investigation. The parents did not lose hope until the very end that their daughter would be found safe and sound. 3 agencies at once joined the search for the girl: the Iowa State Criminal Investigation Unit, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Poweshiek County Police. Together, they worked through more than 2,000 leads and interviewed about 500 people. The search for Anna was scattered throughout all the neighborhoods of Brooklyn. At some point, law enforcement agencies received a message that Anna had been spotted at a truck stop in Kearney, Missouri, 380 kilometers from Brooklyn. The police checked this information and could not find any confirmation of this. The police, as is customary in such cases, checked the version about her boyfriend's involvement. According to statistics, most crimes of this nature are committed by relatives or close people. But not this time. The guy's alibi was ironclad. He really was in another city, and physically could not have been in Brooklyn that evening. Time passed, and the search for Anna yielded no results. The Criminal Investigation Division announced a cash reward for any information that would lead to the return of the girl alive and well. The amount was constantly growing and eventually reached $300,000. This was a very significant amount of money, even by U.S. standards. And for the state of Iowa, the reward was a record. At one point, The police said they had narrowed the search for Anna to a few locations in the Brooklyn area: her boyfriend's house, several local farms, a gas station, a truck stop, and a car wash. But none of this helped locate Anna. The police received hundreds of tips, each of which led the investigation to a dead end. However, one episode seemed very strange. The owner of one of the pig farms where the police were concentrating their search was extremely reluctant to contact law enforcement. He denied any involvement in Anna's disappearance, but refused to take a polygraph test. All this made him an excellent candidate for the role of suspect, but there was no evidence against him. This meant that the police could neither interrogate the man nor search his farm. As a result, the investigation again found itself at a dead end. The police tried to find at least some connection between the farm and Anna's disappearance, but they were not successful, at least at that time. Everything changed on August 21st. A few days earlier, a law enforcement source told reporters that police had found the body of a young white woman. Naturally, everyone immediately assumed that it was Anna. And they were right. On August 21st, police made an official statement. Anna Hopkins's body was found in Powesek County, where Brooklyn was located. The parents identified their daughter. Investigators immediately noticed that she was missing two items that she always took with her: a smartphone and a fitness bracelet. Soon the medical examiner made an official conclusion. The girl was attacked, stabbed several times with a sharp object. This shocked the residents of Brooklyn even more. They all knew each other and could not even imagine that there was a cruel criminal among them. The newspapers also blew this story up, making the whole of America talk about it. The solution to this terrible crime was not long in coming. Almost immediately after the body was discovered, the police arrested 24-year-old Sean Garcia, an illegal immigrant from Mexico who illegally moved to the United States 7 years before the incident. All this time, he worked on different farms, hiding under the name John Butt. The police found Garcia after reviewing surveillance footage from a nearby route that Anna usually took for her run. They saw a Chevrolet Malibu driving back and forth along the road without any apparent purpose. It is impossible to say for sure how the police obtained the confession. According to the official version, Garcia immediately confessed to the crime as soon as they came with questions. According to his story, he was driving past the road along which Anna was running. He liked the girl, and he drove past her several more times. Apparently, these were the movements that the police noticed on the surveillance cameras. At some point, he stopped the car, got out, and ran next to Anna. At the same time, he began to pester her verbally, trying to win the girl's favor. Anna did not like this, and she threatened to call the police. When the girl reached for her phone, Garcia attacked her. After that, he dumped her body in a cornfield and disappeared. Already under arrest, Garcia suddenly changed his strategy and said that he did not remember anything about that evening. It is possible that his lawyer convinced him to recant his confession. Charges were brought against Garcia on August 22nd. At the trial, which began on September 19th, he declared his innocence. The trial dragged on for 3 years, largely thanks to the lawyers. Garcia's relatives hired 2 lawyers who tried their best to achieve an acquittal, or the minimum possible sentence. All of America followed the trial. The thing is that this crime was committed during Donald Trump's presidency. As many of you know, Trump advocated for stricter immigration laws, and he paid most of his attention to Mexico. The Trump administration exploited the crimes committed by Garcia to the fullest extent. The sad fate of Anna Hopkins was cited as an example of why America needs Trump's reforms. At the same time, the girl's father was categorically against his daughter being used in political disputes. But no one listened to the father. The story of one girl thundered throughout the country precisely in the context of immigration laws. After all, it is difficult to disagree that illegal immigrants are dangerous when such a case appears literally under your nose. The speed of the criminal's trial was also affected by the pandemic. And only on May 17, 2021, the main part of the hearing began. Garcia continued to insist on his innocence, but he had no chance. On May 28th, the court delivered a verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. Garcia received the maximum sentence for the state of Iowa, life imprisonment without parole. Now he will spend many years in prison, supported by American taxpayers. Politics aside, the story of Anna Hopkins once again shows us the sad truth. Danger can await anyone where he least expects it, and none of us are immune. After a brief stint in prison for theft and possession of controlled substances, Tammy Person decided to start over. For the first time in her life, she got a stable job at a call center. She also set up a cozy hotel room and decorated it with mementos from her life, photos from her previous modeling job, certificates of passing exams and drug treatment programs, and gifts from loved ones. On Sundays, she attended church and participated in various recovery programs to help others overcome their addictions. To Tammy Person and those who loved her, she seemed to be finally on the path to a happy and healthy life. But instead, she fell victim to a sudden and tragic end at the hands of a monster. In the summer of 2000, Tammy visited the Weingart Center, a humane service center that provided short-term housing, substance abuse recovery programs, medical services, and other assistance to homeless people in Los Angeles County. Tammy came to the center to see a friend, Timothy Todd, who worked there. She had recently broken up with her boyfriend, Ronald Sims, after he began abusing again, but they remained close, and, she confided to Timothy, she didn't want to date anyone else. However, when Tammy caught the eye of fellow resident Troy Powell, recently released from prison, Timothy saw no harm in introducing them. He had seen firsthand how powerful an influence Tammy was on those like Ronald who were trying to break out of a cycle of abuse, and he hoped that perhaps she could help Troy, too. The three quickly became friends, going to movies and restaurants together, and often going for rides in Troy's truck. However, it wasn't until later that their relationship took a dark turn. While Tammy and Timothy remained close to Troy, others were very afraid of their new friend. An ex-boyfriend, Ronald in particular, was afraid to be around him for long periods of time. Troy Powell had been a member of a radical gang during his time in prison and had the tattoos to prove it. Ronald was African American, and from the start, he sensed intense hostility from Troy, which he believed was due to his relationship with Tammy. Perhaps Tammy and Timothy were oblivious to Ronald's concerns. Perhaps they sympathized with Troy's difficult past and hoped to help him mend his ways. Whatever the case, Ronald's dislike of Troy didn't seem to matter much at first. Despite being much closer to Troy, Timothy saw little reason to be suspicious. Later, when he testified in court, Timothy insisted that Tammy and Troy had never been romantically involved. They were friends, he claimed, and only rarely spent time together outside of his presence. But whether or not this was true, Troy didn't see it that way. Troy became obsessed with Tammy, even telling Timothy, "If I can't have her, no one can. I'll kill her and myself." He monitored how much time she spent with other men, showed up at her work with flowers and teddy bears, called her constantly on the phone, and waited outside her house and church in his truck to give her a ride. At first, Tammy tolerated this behavior. She was determined to help Troy, even if his behavior sometimes frightened her. By the end of October, however, her patience had run out. It was time to end all contact with Troy Powell. It was a Sunday morning in early November. Tammy had broken things off for good with Troy, although he continued to stalk her and often left messages on her answering machine. She sought refuge in her work and her church, and counseled people in recovery. On the day of the murder, Tammy stopped by the church to chat with Ronald after the service. Ronald was back on the road to recovery, and the two hoped they could support each other and maybe even rekindle their relationship. But, as they talked, they noticed a menacing figure watching them from across the street. According to Ronald's testimony, Tammy told him she needed to take care of this right now and talk to Troy Powell. That was the last time he saw her alive. CCTV at the Ballington Plaza Hotel, where Tammy Person was staying, captured her entering the lobby with Troy at 10:45 a.m. that morning. A few hours later, Troy left the building alone. This was alarming, since the building's rules do not allow guests to enter or leave without a resident's escort. But Troy simply told a security guard that Tammy was resting in her room. Later that day, Timothy received 2 calls from Troy, claiming that he had killed Tammy. Timothy did not take him seriously, but passed the message on to Ronald, who was much more concerned after his morning meeting. Ronald called the police. Investigators found Tammy's door locked and were forced to break it down. The once cozy home was trashed. Furniture was destroyed, and 3 of the 4 walls were covered in red stains. And in the middle of the room, at the foot of the bed, lay the body of Tammy Person. An autopsy revealed that Tammy had died from multiple blunt force trauma and abuse. This was not just a murder, but something brutal and horrific. Troy Powell was immediately suspected. By that time, it was known that he had been having a questionable relationship with Tammy, and the crime was clearly the work of a jealous lover. In addition, he was one of the last people seen alive with her. So when investigators found Troy's old prison friend, Chris Vanoy, in Troy's truck and wearing a Notre Dame baseball cap splattered with red stains, he was brought in for questioning. It didn't take long for Chris to confess. Troy showed up at his apartment just hours after the murder. He was visibly upset and spent the next few hours calling family and friends. He later confessed to Chris that he had killed Tammy. According to Troy, after the altercation at the church, they went to Tammy's room, spending some time together, when she went into the bathroom to answer a phone call from another man, presumably Ronald, which enraged Troy. During the ensuing argument, Tammy told Troy that he didn't own her and that she could date whoever she wanted, whenever she wanted. This was the last straw for him. The next day, Troy transferred the title to his truck to Chris and fled. Police quickly apprehended Troy Powell at a luxury hotel. The keys to Tammy's office were on her nightstand. He had been planning to rob her office. At his subsequent trial, Troy pleaded insane. He claimed to have been the victim of an abusive childhood, as well as epilepsy, which caused explosive outbursts of anger and amnesia. It was a convenient excuse, given that he had an extensive history of violence against women before meeting Tammy. 2 of his ex-girlfriends testified that they had been previously abused by him. One of them would likely have died if not for the intervention of neighbors. Each time, he claimed to have no memory of the murder. But the jury didn't buy it. The hateful and premeditated nature of the crime belied his claims that it was the result of simple, mindless rage. Troy Powell was ultimately sentenced to death, which he currently awaits in a cell at San Quentin State Prison.